What I've done over the last couple semesters is I've looked through what past students have posted as grant projects, and a lot of them didn't get there just by doing it one time. It's not something that you can do the last week, throw it out there. You're going to miss a lot of points if you do it that way. If you send me sections, or if you really look at this grant example and understand each piece of it, you can get all 50 points. But it's real rare that somebody can do it without sending me a draft first. And even though I have 50 students, I love going through these drafts with you and perfecting them before you finally submit them on the discussion page. So grant writing has been something, I think I wrote my first grant in 1986, probably 1986, and been writing them every year since. Some years maybe 25 to 100,000. My best grant year was $887,000 in 1 year of grant dollars coming in. So I've been writing these things for 30 years. And the format I give you is the basic grant formula for any grant. If you go into Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, police department, any kind of community agency, your kids at school. My son-in-law writes grants as a middle school teacher. Hospitals have foundations that have grant writing for equipment. I mean, it's just very useful tool. So I give you the bare bones of how to write a grant in this class because I want to give something back, not just make you memorize something that you'll forget at the end of this semester. So, and I've had some students send me grants that haven't been in the class for about 5 years, and they're writing them for their community. So because you're in this class, anytime down the line, a year from now, 2 years from now, look me up if you're going to work on a project for somebody. I'll read through it for you. I'd love to do that, see what you're doing down the road. So I'm kind of, it's kind of my hobby. Kind of like this stuff. So, okay, let me bring up the grant example from this student who's gave me permission to use her grant. I didn't just pull it out of the air. She said I could use it. So you don't have to worry about yours being slapped up here next semester. So let's see, where's it at? Here we go. Okay. I'm just going to go through this piece by piece. Each section, and for the good of this class, I've given like 10 points for some sections, 20 points for others, and then I give you a free 5 points, 10 points at the very end on evaluation. And I'll explain that at the end as I go through this. But first of all, can everybody see what I'm looking at? Her title is Painting a New Future. Is that on your screen?
Yes.
You good? All right, great. Okay. In each one of these sections, some people like to start in different places. Some people start with the goals and objectives. Some like just to free write the methodology. It's like, okay, somebody gave me $50,000. This is my story of how I'd spend it all year. So they do that part first. But the sections fit together this way. You always lead with a problem statement. Some grant proposals call that something different, but they call it the request for proposal. They call it a problem statement. There's a couple other terms, but we use, for this class, use problem statement. But your problem statement, like in one of the earlier modules, is about one particular county. So you've already written in a discussion forum about Jackson County, Mississippi, or some county in Florida or some other, Memphis, Shelby County, Tennessee. You've written about particular stats. Now, you don't have to be stuck with that county. You can pick a whole new place if you want. But if you go back and look at your discussion forum on that, you'll see that you already have the bare bones for your problem statement. So this person, Miss Royal, started out writing about how juveniles associate with the wrong people, then follow their example to fit in. So that's kind of her basic thesis for her problem statement. She's writing about West Memphis, Arkansas, which is just right across the line from Memphis, Tennessee. So she has where she pulls her stats from. She's writing about that youth population, and she's writing this grant about schools. I think this young lady's mom was a teacher, or she was a teacher's assistant, but she had a real good sense of what was going on in this school district and what the need was. But the big mistake people make with the problem statement, and out of each class I have one or two, they'll write a grant for America, or they'll write a grant for Puerto Rico. It's like, oh no, you're writing a grant for one, you have 50,000. That's a drop in the bucket in my world. That doesn't get you too far. It will take care of one school district. It will take care of one county, but you don't throw 50,000 across the whole state and expect to do anything. For one, you can't, that'd just be too hard to measure, and it's not that much money. So $50,000, one county. Be thinking about that. That's really important. And so anyhow, she does her problem statement. She has the statistics, and it ends, it's basically just short of a page. You know, she's one page in it there, which is fine. One page ought to do a problem statement. Really, a couple paragraphs could be the problem statement. But you have to not pull the statistics. Okay, I'm not going to say that. I'm not talking to police officers. You need to make sure you have statistics cited somewhere in this. You don't have to have it at the very end. You can put it in the body like she did, but where did you get the stats? And it's not Wikipedia. It comes from an actual source, okay? Something you can trust. You already did this with your discussion page. Also, don't forget in your problem statement or methodology or somewhere, and I don't know where she put it, but make sure you're talking about your basic strategy, theory, whatever you want to call it. I can tell by her first sentence that that's social control theory. So somewhere in here, probably at the end of the methodology, she mentions what theory is informing her whole grant. Now, the reason that I keep stressing theory is because when somebody is dangling money for these grant projects out in the real world, they have a theory behind their organization. So they are sometimes, if it's like Department of Justice, it's a classic control theory. If it's coming out of a hospital, it's going to be a medical theory or a treatment theory if the money comes from a hospital foundation. So you have to tailor your grant writing to whoever is dangling the money's basic theory. You can't write for probation officers, flak jackets, more handcuffs and shackles if you're trying to write this grant to a hospital, okay? I can write that kind of grant fine for a Department of Justice, Sheriff's Association, something like that. Give you another example. Dollar General has a literacy grant. Well, Dollar General's not going to give me their $10,000 if I write saying, well, I'm going to spend this money on electronic shackles to keep kids out of trouble. That's not what they want. they want me to teach them how to read, then I'm saying I'm improving the literacy of a certain population. Okay? Is that clear? So somewhere in that problem statement would be a good place to put your theory so you get full points on this, and I know you understand that little very important lesson. All right? That's about it for problem statement. Let's move to goals. Yeah, goals and objectives. This one gives people problems, but there's two really important things to remember, and then you're going to be okay. And it's okay to just have one goal and two objectives, or this person broke out two goals with one objective under each one. I don't really care. I just want to make sure you understand the difference between goals and objectives. I never can remember the name of the actress, but she was like this FBI lady, and there was going to be a terroristic threat at a Miss Universe pageant, and so she has to be compete in the Miss Universe pageant, and somewhere in there she has to talk about what's her goal for life, or what she wants to be, or what she would achieve if she was Miss Universe, and she has to say world peace. You guys remember that movie? Anyhow, it's some old comedy movie, but that's the way I like to look at goals. Your goal is world peace. Protect the planet. Make everybody beautiful. It's broad, okay? It's a broad statement. For this grant, you would get full points by just saying to reduce juvenile delinquency, okay? Or to improve literacy in Jackson County. It is a broad statement. That's goals. Her goal is to reduce the number of crimes committed by juveniles during after-school hours between 3 p.m. and 10 p.m. Well, that's a little bit narrow. She could have stopped, reduced the number of crimes committed by juveniles. She really could have stopped it right there, because your goal is a very broad statement about what your grant's about. So going back to the Dollar General Literacy Grant, my goal would be to increase student literacy in the probation offender population in Cape Girardeau County. Okay? So it's a broad statement. I don't tell you how I'm going to do it. I just say that's my goal, world peace. Okay? Now, that explains goal. Let's go to objectives. The objective is exactly opposite of the goal. The objective is very specific, and there should be numbers in that. It should tell me how many bodies are going to be doing this stuff, and it also should tell me your success rate. Now, it would be wonderful if in all of my grant projects that I had 100% success, but that doesn't work out. Okay, in probation departments, if probation departments across the United States had 40% of the probationers not reoffend, they would think they were flying. Okay, in my grant projects, sometimes I have met the 80% success level, and people have thought, oh man, that's a great grant. So 80% of the kids are successful with what we, or families are successful with what we are trying to do. And so you are going to say how many people this grant's going to touch, and you're also going to say the success level you're going to reach in the objectives. That is in every grant proposal across the country, no matter what you're writing for, whether it's Girl Scouts or police dogs, either one. Okay, you're going to have that as goals and objectives. So what does she have here other for an objective on the first one? She's going to provide art lessons to 40 at-risk students, 10 students each for 9 weeks. So it's really clear to me what her plan is. And they have at least 75% of the students without new delinquency offenses by the end of the year. That gives me something to look at. So why your objectives are important is because at the end of these grant years, if this was a real grant, at the end of the grant year, whoever you receive the money from would be looking at your success levels, and maybe sometimes they'd have more money for a second year. A one-year grant project is basically worthless, and I've had some of those. What you really want is a grant period that runs on for like a 5-year period. Then you can really do something. So that's why you have those as goals and objectives. So I really like her goals and objectives. They give you really good examples, and you'll be able to write your grant with that. Your methodology is your story. Your methodology, again, you imagine you have that 50,000 in your hand. Somebody gave you a grant in either January 1 or say July 1, either time. You're going to go, this is how I'm going to spend your money. And you just have to just kind of free write, however you want to do it. You can write an outline. You can get a calendar in front of you. You can just start out, here's January. Here's how I would start. I think you need to write a methodology before you write a budget. And I'll tell you why in a second. But on your methodology, having the money is just to me, it's great when I get a grant, but on the other hand, it keeps me up at night because it's like, oh hell, how am I going to spend $50,000 in a year? Okay, it's like, how can I start now in January and spread this out so it all disappears at the end of December? Okay, it's really more difficult than it sounds. You do not want your money to run out in October, all right? Because then everybody's looking at you like, well, I thought this was a 12-month program. So you really want to think about that. How am I going to spread this money out? And if you'll look, this person started talking about eligible candidates for a board. They're going to put, they're going to hire 1 or 2 people and pay them $7,000. She put the money right in her methodology, which she didn't have to. But she talks about how they're going to hire somebody, how they're going to come up with a list of the clients or the candidates to treat, to give the service to, how many hours a day, what kind of equipment they need. The big mistake I see, and I don't count off on these, I mean, especially this semester, I mean, we're all just trying to stay alive, right? So especially this semester, I'm not going to kill you on these grants, but the big problem that I see after everybody gets done and I question the grant, it's like, well, how are the kids going to get there? How are they going to get home? That's always been my problem with a grant. I end up at the end of teaching a judo class on one of my grants. It was kind of funny because the parents would drop them off, but then they'd forget to pick them up. And so I had to start driving a big county van to take my judo students home at the end of the practice because the parents just wouldn't show up to pick them up. And I wasn't going to leave them at the university. So I ended up, I forgot all about that. It wasn't written in when you sign them up. Now, I didn't care because my time's free. I love judo. I'm going to do this anyway. But if somebody was writing a grant, they should have wrote a bus driver in to pick kids up, or at least to drop them off at the end of the day, because parents are basically worthless. I struggle with parents. I do really good with kids, but I've always struggled with parents coming up with their side of the bargain. But anyhow, that's what people forget in these grants is they forget to get kids home. So, you're going to have a bus, and you don't have to put it in the money. You can just write in the narrative. I have a friend who drives a church bus and he's volunteered and the church has volunteered to get these kids home for whatever I'm going to do. So you can just make stuff up. That's the fun part of writing grants. If you have a project or an idea or something you want to do, the rest of it you just make up. See if somebody will give you money for it. Okay? So that's the narrative. Narratives run. If it's a paragraph or two, it's not going to cover it. Narratives have to be a page, 2 pages. It takes a little bit to tell a story if you have $50,000. So make sure you write, again, what the project's going to look like, who's going to work it, how the kid's going to get there, what they're going to do when they're there, how you're going to get them home. Okay? So one way I like to write a budget, and I don't know if this person did it this way, but I write these up and then I go back and look at the narrative and start underlining stuff that's going to cost money. So I would look at this. She's going to pay the driver, will be paid $25 per hour for a total of $1,000 per week for the duration of the program. So it's like, bam, that's a budget item. Okay. Or I'm going to be doing art with kids. Well, you don't have to break. I don't care what a pencil or paint or any of this costs. You can call it art supplies. You can call it counseling services. You don't have to break this all up, but you do have to, if you mention it in the methodology, it should show up in your budget. So you see her budget here. She has contract services, rent. Rent's free because it's a donate. That's always a good one. She has transportation, a program director. I didn't see this. You don't pay your board of directors, but she paid her board of directors. That's crazy. Paying teachers is good. Teachers need extra money. They don't work for free usually. She's putting a little money in a convention center, art gallery event, giving out money. Food always costs you some. I like having food costs. Supplies, she could have just called it supplies and put $2,000 and I would have been happy, but she broke it all down. So that's fine. She broke a lot down. This lady worked on this. Anyhow, that's the budget. This ought to give you good start and example for what a budget looks like. But just read your methodology and then write the budget. I think the budget, I give like 20 points for the narrative, 10 points for the budget, and another 5 or 10 points for this evaluation. So here's the last section of a grant, the evaluation section. Again, like I said earlier, a 1-year grant doesn't do too much for your community. You want something over a span of time so word gets out that, hey, this juvenile office or this hospital or this not-for-profit church organization does this, and they did it last summer and they're going to do it this summer too. So that's the reality of a grant, is trying to get that second year money. So the evaluation piece is usually attached on a grant proposal, and this one, I'm giving it to you for free. You don't have to write your own evaluation piece. I give you 5 or 10 points for this, but just copy and paste these different statements here. Read them so you understand they're there, but use mine. I'm not having you think about that this semester. So just use mine. Just an evaluation is looking back at the goals and objectives, and they're wanting you to, look at the statistics, the crime stats, or you're going to do a pre and post test to show that the kids developed more empathy. I've used all kinds of stuff on an evaluation. I've had focal groups with parents. I've sent out a poll, or I've sent out information to parents and had them fill out a little survey to tell me how their kid's doing, if they got anything out of the grant project. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to evaluate the grant, but I'm just letting you know there is an evaluation at the end of these things. Copy and paste exactly like she did here, something down. So that piece is done. Okay. Now, probably with all of this, that's all. I'll leave this up for a second to see if you guys have any kind of questions about the grant at this point. Let me see if I can get me bigger on the screen. I'll stop sharing to get me a little bigger. There. All right, now I see the chat and everybody's here. Does anybody have any questions about the grant at this point? You can write it in the chat or you can just speak up. No questions. Okay. Here's probably the most important part of this half hour we just spent together. When you get these little sections of the grant done, or when you get the total grant done, if it's any time before the final week, send me a draft. I'll review it. I'll go over it with you either on the phone or through emails and tell you how you can clean it up to get full points. Okay? During that last week of class, I have 100 students in 2 different classes. And if everything and a lot of things pile in that last week, I'm probably not going to be able to get to you to read your draft. But anytime between now and that last week, I'll go over it with you and clean it up. Okay? So full points guaranteed if you clean up a grant with me going back and forth on the draft. We'll fix it. All right? And I think that's about it. I've been here since 1 o'clock today. Unforeseen consequences of people working from home. Out of my 14 officers, I have 2 on sick leave with back injuries right now. They at home either started some projects or spent too much time on the couch. I don't know what they've done, but they have both ended up with back issues and they're having to go to the doctor and get that fixed. So, you know, our lives are changed with this work from home stuff. So make sure you're moving around, you're drinking lots of water. I don't know what these guys have done, but you know, I'm trying to stay healthy and move around so I can continue to teach and work and do what needs to be done here as a juvenile officer and a adjunct professor. So remember that, and remember I'm available to you. I'm working around the clock now. The juvenile delinquents are staying home, which is wonderful. My referral rate per week has dropped from about 25 a week down to 2 a week. So I'm thinking kids are staying home, but we're taking children from meth addicts at a unheard of rate. So I think these kids that would be at school being taken care of by teachers, fed breakfast, lunch, and then they go home by staying home all day, those lives are falling apart. And so I think we have 10 or 12 new kids in foster care already this week in 4 or 5 cases where people with meth addictions and opiate addictions, somebody, either the neighbor, police, family members have reported them. And then when children's division goes to the house, it's just everything's falling apart. People are high. The kids test positive for meth from babies up to about 8, 9 years old. So I'm just working those around the clock right now with my on-call officers. So I've been extremely busy with that. Let's see. Lacey says she's hurt her knee and has to do physical therapy. Yeah. I think I'm trying to get my mother to stay. She's trying to clean her cabinets at home, and it's like, Mom, you're 83 years old. Don't get on your knees and clean your cabinets. You know, you really don't need to be doing that. Walk around the house, walk in the backyard, look at the flowers, but just don't over clean during this break and end up with something hurt. So everybody needs to stay healthy. Okay, 4:35, 5 minutes over. Does anybody have any questions that are on the screen? I'm glad I had somebody here to look at today. Sometimes I make these live classes and I'm by myself because people have other things to do, whether I do it at 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock, or whatever. So it's good to have you here. Okay, I don't see any questions, so I'm going to end the meeting. I appreciate it, guys. Stay with me. Keep turning in assignments. And my class is going to be the least of your worries, okay? So, all right, take care of yourself. I'm going to shut her down.